Hello everyone, my name is Cosmic and welcome to the video in which I rank the difficulty of Mortal Shell's bosses. Please keep in mind that this video is completely my opinion and is in no way objective. Also, please be aware that this video is excluding the various mini-bosses you can encounter and only consists of the main ones. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Number 5, IMROD the Unrepentant. This boss of fire is in my opinion the easiest boss in the game for multiple reasons. Firstly, he's a chunky unit holding a giant mace. Usually bosses like this move somewhat slowly and hit very hard, like Smo or Velstadt from the Dark Souls games, and IMROD is no exception. They replace speed with damage, as dodging them is usually much easier and more generous than dodging a much faster boss, so it punishes you more for failing. Keeping at a distance from IMROD means he will charge at you and flail his mace twice. This is a fairly simple attack to deal with despite how intimidating it looks. You can either dodge the first and then harden the second to punish, or vice versa. You can pick whichever you'd prefer. IMROD has access to multiple slam attacks, all of which can be simply hardened or dodged to give you a large window to punish whatever way you'd like. He will also breathe fire at the ground in a small arc in front of him. If you react to this too slowly, he will burn you, and burn damage is not generous in this game, so look out for that and keep welt caps handy. Hardening for this attack works and you will not be burned, however using abilities that give you invincibility frames like the mechanical spike will only temporarily protect you, and the burn meter will still begin and burn you when your iframes have gone. Once you've whittled down his first phase, he'll unexpectedly get back up for a second. His moveset doesn't change a whole lot, but he does kick you away now. Despite the devastating appearance of this attack, it's actually not bad at all. After he kicks you, he will either breathe fire onto the ground to mock you, or walk to a corpse, light it on fire, and throw it at you. Both of these attacks can be punished inconsequentially. If he breathes fire, just get up and hit him a few times, but be careful for a near instant follow-up. If he warps to a corpse, hug him and wail on him, because the body he throws will never hit you provided you are right on top of him. All in all, IMROD the Unrepentant, despite being a two-phase fight, is by far the easiest boss in this game in my opinion, due to his slow speed and small moveset, and I highly suggest tackling him first. Number 4, TARSUS the First Martyr. Gotta be honest, I really disliked this boss when I first played this game. I was still terrible at it when I got to this boss, and it was the first one that I fought, and I found him extremely difficult. I think that will probably be the case for a lot of you who are playing the game now, fresh on its release. However, once you get used to the game's core mechanics more and understand how HADERN works better, I think TARSUS becomes one of the easier encounters despite being after one of the hardest areas in the game. His first phase can be very intimidating at first with him dashing around the arena, but to dodge this, use audio cues to your advantage. There's a very distinct sound that plays when he's about to charge, so as soon as you hear it, just dodge or roll. The iframes are quite generous. Sound is more reliable here as the position he charges from is random each time. Although you can see him, it's not worth frantically twisting the camera to try and spot him. TARSUS can close the distance on you very quickly by disappearing into the mist and reappearing somewhere behind you. Similarly here, it's usually not worth trying to look for him, so prematurely hardening— oh, no, that's being taken out of context— is usually the plan here. Just be sure to dodge his second attack and punish after this. This is now where you're in the perfect position. His close range melee attack combos almost always finish in this extremely slow slam attack that he grunts before performing. If you can dodge or preferably harden this slam, you have a huge window to punish for some decent damage. He can also stab his sword into the ground and summon a blizzard around him. Obviously you have to stay away from this, but this is the perfect opportunity to heal or consume an ethereal diapason to regain resurrection powers if you lost it. This fight also has a second phase, but just like IMROD, I believe this phase is easier than his first. His charging attacks are the easiest thing in the world to see coming and to harden on. He very rarely follows up, but is still possible, so the tactic of hardening and punishing is excellent here, provided you pay close attention to whether he's following up. If you have the stamina for this, you can roll the follow-up no problem as long as you see it coming. Other than that, he pretty much just slides around the arena having a good time. Try and keep your distance, punish the charge attacks while looking for follow-ups, and you shouldn't have too many problems with the first Martyr. Number 3, HADERN. This boss was very difficult to rank, and I was in two minds about including him in the first place. HADERN is the first boss you will encounter in Mortal Shell. Just like Genichiro Ashina from Sekiro, you are not supposed to win this tutorial encounter with him. However, you can encounter HADERN 4 additional times, your reward for defeating him being a new weapon. If you want to know more about the different shells, weapons, and more about Mortal Shell's core mechanics, check out the 10 facts video made by my friend Kazoodle, link in the video description. HADERN has two interesting mechanics that separates him from the other bosses entirely. Firstly, HADERN can harden. Yes, HADERN can harden. Why did they make the name so similar? Anyway, this doesn't really change the fight a whole amount, as unlike you, HADERN cannot stay hardened forever and will quickly return to his attack stance in a matter of seconds. Secondly, he will be using whatever weapon you are trying to acquire. For example, if you choose to fight him at the Fire Mace altar, he will have that weapon equipped and fight you with it. As interesting as this sounds, there's not too much else to say about HADERN, but what makes it more difficult than IMROD and TARSUS is his speed and his bulk. He actually has a very respectable amount of health, even with a +5 weapon, and he is much faster than almost every other boss on this list, no matter what weapon he is using. Please don't sweat if you die to him in the tutorial. I assure you this is what is supposed to happen, so if you want your sweet, sweet revenge, why not try your hand out with a new weapon? This is a fun fight, and with your reward being an entirely new weapon, you're missing out if you don't try it. Number 2, Crucix the Twiceborn. This boss is by far my favorite in terms of appearance, and I think he's very unique. Before this battle, you are almost forced to lose your shell. I say almost, but it's possible to survive with one of the shells, which you can find out more information about in my friend's video. With any other shell, you have to fight Crucix without a resurrection, and this makes the fight much, much more difficult. Of course, you can consume an ethereal diapason to regain that ability, but they are extremely limited, so I'm ignoring that for the context of this ranking. Even with an extra res, this fight is still very hard anyway, and I don't think the ranking would change. Crucix the Twiceborn is by far the fastest boss in this game. He pirouettes everywhere, unpredictably swinging his hammer and spear. This makes punishing him very awkward sometimes and will make you instinctively run away from him. However, running away from him also makes the fight awkward because the second guy on Crucix's chest will shoot crossbow bolts at you. The strategy of using the mechanical spike, which you may or may not have discovered at this point, does not work as well here as well. Mechanical Spike is extremely powerful despite its resolve cost and is a guaranteed stagger on any boss and enemy if it connects. However, with Crucix, you cannot punish this stagger as effectively because the little guy will shoot crossbow bolts at you. Although they don't do much damage, it punishes you for using a strategy that works on almost every other boss in the game. Despite the fact that he has a shield, it's only really cosmetic and he doesn't really use it for anything. It's a good thing too, because Crucix seems to have more arms and weapons than Murgo's Wet Nurse. He has some combos that are nice to punish, but don't give you as much time, so an extremely precise combination of hardens and dodges are required to keep good stamina to keep a good cycle going. Keeping distance and baiting the big jump attack once you've whittled his health down a little bit is a fantastic strategy, but just remember that the bolts come before he slams, but hardening will protect you from both bolts and the slam itself. As if his speed and the lack of resurrection wasn't enough, Crucix has a second phase. I highly recommend trying out parrying on this phase. Provided you have resolve, the parry window is pretty generous and the riposte will deal devastating damage, and you'll see me doing a lot of that in this video. But this is by no means the only way to deal with this phase. He's still very fast, but actually has a lot more windows for punishment as he has longer recovery times in this phase. And similarly to Tarsus, has a few long charge attacks that can be easily hardened for a brief punishment before you need to dodge away from follow-ups. There's not much else to say about Crucix now. His speed, the lack of resurrection, a double phase fight, and his somewhat bulky health bar in both phases means that even parrying and riposting consistently will make this fight one of the most troublesome in the game, but still not the most troublesome. Before we move on to the last boss, please be sure to check out my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/cosmicborn. I'll be doing some deathless speedruns of this game in the coming days, and I would love to see you there. And the hardest boss in Mortal Shell and the #1 entry is the Unchained. Despite him being by far the largest boss you fight in the game, this does not mean he can't close the distance on you instantly with incredible speed. He has a very quick slide attack that is actually very comfy to dodge or harden and punish for a few attacks. It's now, though, where the fight becomes much more difficult. Fighting the Unchained up close makes you the target of many extremely hard-hitting melee swings from either of his lanky arms, his armored beak, or his tail. Armored beak attack in particular here is very fast and quite difficult to see coming, and the left tail attack has two separate hitboxes, one for when he swings it forward and the other when it goes back. The arm swings vary. If he hits you with his right arm, it's a somewhat fast but fairly telegraphed singular slam, and the other is a deceiving, albeit generously so, swing in an arc. He will delay this swing, which looks weird, but actually allows you to dodge or harden if you accidentally cancel or miss the opportunity when you first see the attack. Despite his size, he's extremely fast sometimes, as I mentioned earlier. He can jump pack twice and summon 2 mounds of water, which will damage and stagger you if you don't roll through them. If this happens, it can very possibly put you in danger of getting hit by his charge attack afterwards. Alternatively, he will slam the ground with his right arm, and this will summon multiple additional enemies that will die in one hit. These can be very awkward to kill depending on your weapon and deal considerable damage. Killing these while also dealing with the Unchained can be very hard depending on circumstances, and the boss does not kill or even damage them with his attacks. Now that I can talk about his health bar and phase thresholds, I will say that this is one of the hardest parts of this fight. Even at full attack power, the Unchained has an extremely girthy health bar, and this makes the fight extremely lengthy. At around 40% HP, you'll pass the second phase threshold, and the Unchained will summon a massive whirlpool, as well as the additional enemies again. If you fall into this whirlpool, you'll die. If these enemies fall into the whirlpool, they'll individually heal the boss, so you have to try and deal with them as quickly as possible without letting it heal too much. Aside from this, the fight isn't too much different, aside from the fact its fast beak attack means it gets stuck in the ground for a while. In conclusion, a brutal mixture of a very wide range of attacks, a massive health bar, the ability to summon additional enemies, and even use them to heal itself, the Unchained is a tiresome fight and will certainly be one of, if not the most difficult bosses in Mortal Shell. And that's it. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to break script here for a second. I just want to add here that every single boss in this list can be somewhat cheesed by using a combination of items and abilities, like the Mechanical Spike and Golden Bell, but I actually ignored those strategies for the context of this boss ranking video, because, I mean, how do you compare cheesing a very hard boss to cheesing a very easy boss? There's pretty much no difference. If you like this style of content and would like to see more, subscribe to the channel and check out the boss ranking playlist. The link will be in the description, as well as a few other videos. Thanks again for watching. I will see you all next time.